The store felt like another world, a temple of luxury lit by lamps that glowed like diamonds, spotless glass displays and carpets so soft it felt like they swallowed any hurried step. It was the kind of place where customers wore watches worth more than a car and spoke softly, as if every word came with a price tag. In the middle of that immaculate scene, salespeople moved with rehearsed elegance, always scanning the room to decide who did, or did not, deserve to be helped. It was into this world of showy sophistication that he walked. Simple clothes, worn-out sneakers, a curious but steady gaze. His name was Lucas Andrade, and the contrast between him and the rest of the store was impossible to ignore. Within seconds, two salespeople exchanged a look, that silent expression that said everything. "This one's lost. He doesn't belong here." Lucas walked slowly toward the most exclusive part of the store, where the most expensive accessories were kept, items many people only dared to touch with gloves on. He stopped in front of a genuine leather briefcase, a rare piece, newly arrived from Italy. Before he could even reach out his hand, a sharp voice cut through the air behind him. "Hey, buddy," said the salesman Marcos, his smile dripping with poison. "This section isn't for you. The products here are, let's say, outside your reality." Several customers glanced sideways, some hiding small laughs. Lucas stayed calm. He took a deep breath and replied, "I just wanted to take a look at that briefcase." Marcos laughed. He laughed loud enough to draw even more attention. "People like you don't shop in a place like this," he said slowly, savoring each word. "You can check out the cheap catalog in the back near the exit." The sentence hit the air like a hammer, but the worst was yet to come. When Lucas insisted, saying he needed a special gift, Marcos raised his eyebrows with a theatrical irony. "A gift for a birthday, Mother's Day?" He laughed again. "Look, let's make this easier. How much do you have? Give me 5 minutes to size you up and I'll show you something more in your price range." The people around them smiled and whispered comments that felt like knives. Lucas looked at the briefcase once more, then turned his gaze back to the salesman. "I'd like to see that specific piece," he repeated, without raising his voice. Marcos sighed loudly, turned to his co-workers, and signaled for them not to worry. It was obvious he wanted to turn this into a show. "Fine, I'll grab it, but just so you understand that this—" he ran his hand over the briefcase with exaggerated flair, "isn't for just anyone, and of course once you see the price, I'll walk you straight to the door." The silence that followed was almost cruel. Everyone seemed to be waiting for the final humiliation. But what no one there knew was that this briefcase had been created as a special order, and the brand itself had a very close relationship with someone very important, and that someone was standing right in front of them. Marcos opened the catalog, ready to humiliate Lucas, when the store manager appeared, rushing in while talking on the phone. "Yes, sir. We're already preparing everything for the owner's visit. He'll be here today." The word owner echoed through the store like a powerful whisper, and standing there in front of the briefcase with a calm expression was exactly the man no one would ever dare imagine. No one there had any idea who they were messing with. Now let me take you deeper. To understand who Lucas Andrade really was, we need to go back a few years. Lucas wasn't born surrounded by shining windows or soft carpets. He grew up in a modest home in a working-class neighborhood, with peeling plaster on the walls and the smell of freshly brewed coffee filling the kitchen early in the morning. His mother, Rosa, worked as a cleaning lady. She left before sunrise and often came back after he'd already had dinner, but she still kept a tired smile reserved just for him. His father, Antonio, had been a street vendor his whole life. He sold umbrellas under the blazing sun, sunglasses in the pouring rain, whatever he could. He was always telling his son, "Lucas, my boy, we don't choose where we're born, but we do choose how we treat people." From a young age, Lucas went with his father to open-air markets and busy downtown streets. While other kids dreamed about video games, he was fascinated by store windows, not by the luxury itself, but by the way everything was arranged, by how people were treated inside. He watched salespeople in fancy stores speak softly, offer coffee, pull out chairs. Then he looked at his father standing out on the street, getting shoved by people in a hurry. One day, after seeing a security guard kick a street vendor away from the entrance of a designer store, Lucas grabbed his father's hand tightly and asked, "Dad, why do they treat us like that?" Antonio looked at his son, took a deep breath and said, "Because they confuse money with worth. They think that people who have less deserve less respect." That sentence burned into Lucas's heart as if carved with a hot iron. At school, things weren't much different. He studied at a public school, always using supplies donated by neighbors. He was the boy with worn-out flip-flops, the one who brought a homemade sandwich wrapped in foil, while some classmates showed up with brand-name backpacks. Even so, Lucas was one of the best students in the class. He loved math, loved looking at prices, understanding promotions, mentally adding up the total of groceries before getting to the cashier. His teacher, Celia, was the first person outside his home to see something special in him. "You've got a head for business, you know that?" she told him once, after an activity where he'd helped his classmates organize a trade fair at school. "But your greatest talent isn't with numbers, Lucas. It's with people. You notice everyone." He didn't fully understand, but he held on to her words. Time passed, and the first small injustices came. At a classmate's birthday party in a fancy venue at the mall, the security guard at the entrance looked Lucas up and down in his simple clothes and asked, "Are you sure you were invited?" Some boys laughed. Lucas flushed with embarrassment, but pulled the crumpled invitation out of his pocket. He got in, but spent the whole party feeling like he was invading a place that wasn't meant for him. On the way home, sitting next to his mother on a crowded bus, he looked out the window at the mall lights fading in the distance and made a silent promise. "One day, no one will ever look at me like I'm in the wrong place again." He just had no idea how big the challenges ahead would be. That was when the challenges started to grow. As a teenager, Lucas already understood that if he wanted to change his life, he would have to start earlier than everyone else. While many of his friends spent their afternoons playing soccer in the street, he took 2 buses to help his father at the stall downtown, and still somehow came home with enough energy left to study. His days started early. Before school, he helped his mother organize the house, set the coffee on the table, washed his own dishes. Then, backpack on his shoulders, he headed to his public school with a notebook full of notes and little ideas scribbled in the margins. Simple store, incredible service. Everyone treated the same, no matter their clothes. Seeds of something he didn't even have a name for yet. Then came his first big chance to get closer to the world he'd only watched through store windows. The school received a flyer for a youth trainee program at a big mall in the city. The participating stores were famous, with shiny storefronts and brand names he only saw in TV commercials. Many classmates said it was for rich kids only. Lucas thought differently. "I'm going to try," he told teacher Celia. "I don't even know if they'll pick me, but I want to see what it's like in there." She smiled, proud. "Go, Lucas. Even if it doesn't work out, you'll learn something." The selection process seemed designed to discourage anyone from his background. Online applications, interviews, group dynamics. In the first stage, he was almost turned away for not having a proper photo on his resume. "Don't you have a more presentable photo?" the assistant asked, staring at the picture of him in his school uniform. Lucas swallowed hard, but answered calmly, "The photo is simple, but what I can do goes way beyond that picture." He passed. In the group interview, he sat next to well-dressed teenagers, expensive perfumes, rehearsed speeches. When his turn came, he didn't make anything up. He talked about his father's street stall, his mother's cleaning jobs, and his dream of creating a place where no one would be humiliated for how they were dressed. Some smirked, but the recruiter fell silent, watching the boy in worn-out sandals with a steady gaze. "You know you'll be dealing with demanding customers, right?" she asked. "People who judge you by your appearance first." "I know," Lucas replied. "And that's exactly why I want to be there, because I never forgot what it feels like to be on the outside, being judged." That night, on the crowded bus ride home, his simple phone buzzed. The message was short. "Congratulations. You've been selected for the sales trainee program." Lucas's heart raced. He knew that from that moment on, nothing would be easy. He would have to balance school, work at the mall, and still help his father whenever possible. There would be nights with very little sleep, weekends without rest, holidays spent behind a counter while others had fun. Looking at the city lights through the bus window, he made another silent decision. "I'm going to learn everything I can about this world, and one day I'll build a place where no one has to feel small just because they have less money." Years later, that commitment would demand a high price, but it would also bring unimaginable rewards. Adulthood came fast for Lucas. In the mornings, crowded buses and store uniforms. At night, a business administration degree paid for with sheer effort. While many classmates wanted a steady job and nothing more, Lucas wanted to understand how the retail world worked from the inside. At the mid-range store in the mall, he learned about sales targets, inventory management and promotions. But what marked him most were the scenes of prejudice he saw every day. Customers in simple clothes were rushed through. Customers with a rich look were met with smiles and coffee. Those scenes always took him back to his childhood and ignited the same thought. You can sell well without humiliating anyone. At home after work he studied however he could, used books, borrowed materials, free videos. In an old notebook, he wrote down mistakes he saw, new ideas for customer service, and phrases he never wanted to hear from his own staff someday, like, "Don't waste time with someone who won't buy." Every month, he put aside a small slice of his salary and hid it in an envelope at home. Quietly, he called it his seed. His first real chance to plant that seed came with Nivaldo, a friend of his father's and owner of a small accessory store in a growing neighborhood. "Lucas, either you help me or I close the doors," he vented. The store was simple and cluttered, good products lost among messy shelves. In one weekend, Lucas reorganized everything: the window display, product layout, pricing. Most importantly, he sat down with the two salespeople. "Here, we don't look at clothes, shoes, or watches," he told them. "We look at the person. Anyone who walks in is treated like an important customer. Deal?" Over the next few weeks, the change was obvious. People who used to just peek through the door started coming in, trying things on, buying small gifts. The register, once almost always empty, started to move. Nivaldo realized that it wasn't luck. It was method. "If it weren't for you, I'd be closed by now," he said, emotional. "I don't have money to pay you what you deserve, so I want to give you a share. You bring the brains, I bring the location. Deal?" Lucas accepted, feeling fear and excitement mix in his chest. He still took the same bus, walked the same streets, but now he was a partner in a business. He made a clear decision. He wouldn't use the little profit to look flashy. He would reinvest every cent. The results caught the attention of a small local investor who liked to watch street movement. He saw the store busy almost every day, asked for numbers, did some quick math. "This could become a chain," the investor said. "I want to open another branch with you." Instead of selling his share and changing his life overnight, Lucas chose to grow slowly. He replicated the model at a new location, keeping fair prices and the same respectful way of treating people. 2 stores became 3, then 4. The brand gained a name, a visual identity, better suppliers. It moved into smaller malls, and before long, bigger shopping centers were trying to attract them. In quiet meetings, Lucas signed as the majority partner. In the balance sheets, his name appeared next to numbers that once seemed unreachable. Even so, there were no imported cars or designer suits. He still showed up at the stores dressed simply, watching closely to see if the golden rule was being followed. No one gets treated worse just because they look like they have less. To anyone passing him in the hallway, he was just another customer. But in reality, he was already the mind behind a growing accessories network, the same network that supplied products to high-end stores. Now let me show you how this ordinary customer ended up walking through the same corridors where he'd once been belittled. And that's how, years later, Lucas walked into that upscale mall, looking like just another face in the crowd, but carrying a power no one there could imagine. Back to the present, the silence in the luxury store felt heavier than ever. The lights still shone, the carpet was still flawless, but now there was something different in the air, a charge of tension and expectation. Lucas was still standing in front of the Italian leather briefcase, while Marcos, the salesman with the air of superiority, pretended he was doing Lucas a favor. "So, let's see," Marcos said, holding up the price tag like a trophy. "This briefcase cost more than many people make in a year. I'm sure you'll want to look at something else, something more accessible." Some customers discreetly moved closer, curious. An elegant woman whispered to her husband, "He doesn't look like someone who shops here." Lucas heard it, and once again, the words hit hard, but they didn't knock him down. He took a breath, stayed composed, and asked, "Do you issue receipts in the name of a business?" Marcos let out a short, mocking laugh. "A business?" he repeated, dripping sarcasm. "Of course we do. But for that you need a real company, you know?" He looked him up and down. "A tiny little street vendor registration doesn't count." The laughter was no longer hidden. A young sales associate in the back shook his head in disapproval, but didn't dare step in. The manager watched from a distance with a neutral expression, more worried about store flow than about basic respect. Lucas remained calm. "All right," he said. "Even so, I want to take this briefcase, and 3 more from the same line, if you have them in stock." For a second, the room froze. A customer stopped mid-step. A security guard, who hadn't even noticed what was going on, turned his head. Marcos exaggerated his reaction. 3, he repeated, almost choking on a laugh. Of course, of course. He spoke slowly, like someone dealing with a stubborn child. Let's do this. First, I'll check your card limit. That way, we avoid any embarrassment, okay? It was a second humiliation, now disguised as standard procedure. He grabbed the briefcase carelessly and walked toward the counter without even offering Lucas a chair. "Follow me, sir," he said, wearing a fake respect anyone could see through. On the way, one of the other salespeople whispered, assuming Lucas couldn't hear, "There's always one of these. Comes in, makes a scene, asks the price, wants to be treated like a millionaire, and then card declined." That comment, which once would have crushed the boy who cried on the bus on his way home, now only confirmed something Lucas already knew. The mindset inside that store was sick. At the register, Marcos asked loudly, "Debit, credit, or split into pure suffering?" More laughter. The cashier tried to hide her discomfort, but kept her eyes on the system. Lucas pulled out his simple wallet. From it, he didn't take one card, but 2. He laid them on the counter calmly. "Either one is fine," he said. "Use whichever works best for the store." Marcos picked one of the cards, glanced quickly at the name, but didn't really register it. He was more focused on proving to everyone that he'd been right about this improbable customer. "I'll just run the full amount, okay?" he announced loudly. "We like to keep things simple around here." It was almost a public bet, a challenge. He wanted the system to decline the payment. He wanted to see Lucas's face crumble under everyone's eyes. Now let me show you how that challenge started to turn against him. While Marcos punched in the amount and waited, a smug smile ready on his lips, no one in that store had any idea that the entire game was about to flip. The card machine beeped, a dry little sound that somehow echoed louder than all the whispers in the store. Transaction approved. No suspense. No request for a password. No installment plan. Lucas's card absorbed the total as if he'd just bought a loaf of bread and milk. The cashier blinked in surprise and checked the screen twice. Marcos, who'd already lined up his joke for the rejection, froze. "Approved?" he asked, now almost whispering. "Approved," the cashier confirmed. "Paid in full, and he still has a very high limit left." Some customers exchanged looks. The elegant woman who had said he didn't look like the kind of person who shops here now watched him very differently. The security guard straightened his jacket and pretended he was just passing by. Lucas stayed exactly as he was, steady, calm. "Great," he said. "Before we finish, I'd like the invoice made out to my company." He took a folded document from his wallet and laid it on the counter. The cashier leaned in to read, and her eyes widened. You're the majority owner of Andrade Accessories?" she stammered. The name landed heavily in the air. Some people recognized it instantly. It was the same chain that supplied accessories to various stores across the city, including some in that very mall. Now the atmosphere really began to change. Marcos let out a dry, nervous laugh. "Oh, so you have a little shop, is that it?" he said, still trying to downplay it. "Nowadays, any corner calls itself a chain." Lucas didn't raise his voice. "Actually, it's 17 physical stores and an online shop that ships nationwide," he said. "And 2 years ago, we signed a supply contract with the brand you sell here." He unlocked his phone, opened an email, and turned the screen toward the cashier. There were the digital contracts, the logo of the international brand, his name as legal representative. She swallowed hard. This wasn't a story, it was proof. Some customers moved even closer. A young man pulled his phone out of his pocket, as if already planning to look up Andrade Accessories later. Others started to look at Marcos, less like the confident expert and more like a problem. Now let me show you how Marcos's pride tried to resist. "Okay, so you've got a chain," the salesman muttered, still clinging to control. "But that doesn't change the fact that this is a high-end store. We cater to a certain kind of clientele." Lucas cut in, still calm. "A certain kind of clientele that looks more like the card than the person." The silence thickened. The elegant woman avoided his eyes, suddenly ashamed of herself. The cashier lowered her head. Marcos huffed. "Look, no need to dramatize. You just got lucky, that's all. Caught a good wave, found a niche," he said, as if Lucas's success were a fluke. Lucas took another breath. "Luck is treating the right people well for a long time," he replied. "The rest is work." He wasn't shouting, but his words hit deep. Still, there were those who thought he was exaggerating, that he was stretching the story. But that was only the beginning. The next signs of who he really was would be impossible to ignore. The atmosphere in the store was no longer the same. The approved payment, the company ID, the contracts, together they had cracked Marcos's arrogant certainty. Even so, many there still didn't quite grasp how big this was. Maybe they thought it was just a medium-sized chain. It was easier to believe that than to face their own prejudice. Then the glass door opened with a soft beep, and 3 people walked in at once. A man in a perfectly tailored suit, a woman with a mall identification badge, and an older foreign gentleman with grey hair, accompanied by an interpreter. They weren't normal customers. They were the kind of people who made managers straighten their backs and salespeople quickly hide their phones. The manager almost tripped, rushing toward them. "Good afternoon, sirs. Welcome," he said, nervous. "How can we help you today?" The man in the suit answered first. "Actually, we're looking for a specific customer. We were informed he'd be here today to see the new collection." Every eye followed his gaze as it scanned the store until it stopped right on Lucas. The older foreign gentleman smiled when he saw him. "Mr. Andrade," he said with a strong accent, opening his arms in a warm greeting. "At last, we meet again in person." Lucas shook his hand naturally, like someone greeting an old acquaintance. "It's a pleasure to see you again, Mr. Carlini," he replied. "Welcome back to Brazil." The interpreter didn't even need to translate. Their connection was obvious. The man in the suit turned to the staff and customers. "For anyone who doesn't know, this is Mr. Carlini, the global director of the brand you sell here, and he's here to accompany the brand's main partner in this country." The word main crashed over the room like thunder. Some customers' eyes went wide. The cashier froze. Marcos felt his knees weaken. Now, Lucas's authority was impossible to ignore. The mall representative, who had been quietly watching, stepped forward. "Mr. Lucas," she said respectfully, "on behalf of the mall management, I want to thank you for your partnership with our space. Andrade Accessories is one of our biggest traffic drivers today. A lot of people come to this mall because of your stores." Many now looked at Lucas completely differently. He was no longer the out-of-place man in simple clothes. He was someone who made numbers, contracts, and foot traffic happen. Mr. Carlini walked over to the display where the brand's products were showcased. "When we decided to expand our presence in this country," he said through the interpreter, "we received a lot of offers. But we chose Andrade Accessories because they have something money can't buy: respect for people. They treat the customer who buys a simple bracelet with the same care as the one who buys a briefcase." He turned directly to Lucas. "You are one of our most important partners in the world today." Marcos lowered his eyes. The once confident face was pale now, and his hands trembled. He tried to slip away quietly, but it was far too late. The story had already been laid bare, and everyone knew exactly who was who. Some customers who had laughed at Lucas earlier now whispered, embarrassed, "He's the owner of that chain. I've shopped there. They're so polite. If I'd known, I never would have judged him just by his clothes." The facade of superiority was crumbling fast. The manager, realizing just how bad this was, swallowed hard, and still no one there was prepared for the final reveal. The atmosphere had shifted, but what came next would change everything. Until that moment, Lucas was only the major partner of the brand and the name behind Andrade Accessories. For many, that would already be more than enough to crush any arrogance. But this story had one last card to play. The manager, sweating, tried to regain control. "Mr. Lucas, I apologize for any misunderstanding," he said. "Our team had no idea who you were." Lucas looked around. He saw the embarrassed cashier, the customers avoiding his gaze, Marcos frozen behind the counter. "Funny," Lucas replied calmly. "All you needed to know was that I'm a customer. That should have been enough to treat me with respect." Mr. Carlini frowned, sensing something serious had happened. The mall representative also started to put the pieces together. Then a fourth person rushed in, a middle-aged man, well-dressed, with a badge that read Regional Director. "Mr. Andrade," he exclaimed, "I just heard you were here. It's an honor to meet you in person." He shook Lucas's hand with both of his. "I'm Alvaro, Regional Director for this group," he said. "First of all, I want to thank you for trusting us with your investments." Marcos blinked. "Investments," he whispered. Alvaro kept going, unaware of how hard his words were hitting everyone else. "When Andrade Capital Fund took a controlling stake in the holding company that owns this store, we got a second wind. Thanks to your investment, we were able to keep several locations open during the crisis." Silence. Absolute. Andrade Capital Fund, controlling stake, holding company that owns this store. The real owner had just been introduced, right in the middle of the sales floor. Lucas took a deep breath. He preferred his investments to stay behind the scenes, but in that moment, hiding the truth would mean letting injustice win yet again. He opened the folder he'd brought with him, removed an envelope with the holding company's logo, and laid some documents on the counter for the manager and Alvaro to see. "These are the ownership papers," he said. "Here's the fund structure and specifically our share in this chain of stores." The manager leaned in with shaking hands. His eyes skimmed the lines until they stopped on one name in bold: Lucas Enrique Andrade, controlling partner. Marcos stepped back, as if he'd been slapped. The sentences he'd enjoyed saying earlier came back to him like a punch. "People like you don't shop in a place like this. This isn't your reality." Now, reality was crashing down on him. Customers watched in stunned silence. A woman, who had bad-mouthed Lucas under her breath, whispered, "My God, he owns all this." Mr. Carlini smiled. "I already knew you were big, Lucas," he said. "But seeing your network investing in the very people who once turned their backs on you, that says a lot about who you are." Lucas didn't smile. "I invest in businesses," he said. "But above all, I believe in people. It's just a shame some still think fabric, shoes, or watches define someone's worth." He didn't need to shout. Everyone heard him. Everyone felt it. Marcos tried to step closer. "Mr. Lucas, I didn't know. It was a misunderstanding. I was just following the store's pattern, our target clientele." "The store's pattern," Lucas repeated. "If the store's pattern is humiliating people who look like they have less, then the problem is a lot bigger than you think." Marcos's hands shook. The manager seemed to shrink with every second. This was the moment the masks fell. No one could pretend anymore. No one could shove the blame on the system without accepting responsibility. The entire store was breathing shame and anticipation. Everyone knew a reckoning was coming, and it wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. The silence wasn't curiosity anymore. It was embarrassment. And this time, the one exposed wasn't Lucas. It was Marcos. Lucas turned to him, still calm. "Marcos, right?" he asked. The salesman nodded. "Answer me one thing," Lucas continued. "Where did you learn that clothes define character? In what manual does it say that people who look poorer deserve to be humiliated?" Marcos tried to keep his composure. "I was just following the store's standard. We focus on the clients who really buy, the high-value customers." Lucas didn't have to raise his voice. "A high-value customer," he said, "is the one who leaves this place feeling respected. You confused price with dignity." Some employees lowered their heads. Alvaro watched in silence, seeing the true size of the problem. "I came from nothing," Lucas went on. "I know exactly how it feels to be treated like an intruder. There's a line we never cross. Humiliating someone because of their appearance. Today, that line wasn't just crossed, it was crushed." Marcos took a shaky breath. I'm sorry, Mr. Lucas. I was just joking. I didn't mean... If I'd known who you were..." Lucas raised his hand. "That's the point," he cut in. "You'd only respect me if you knew who I was. And what about everyone who came in before me? All the people like you." You pushed toward the door. Now his mask fell for good. Tears began to fall. The salesman who once laughed loudest now could barely stand. "I have a little daughter. I need this job. I can change," he stammered. The manager tried to salvage the situation. "Mr. Lucas, we'll fix this with training and retraining." "Training doesn't work if leadership looks the other way," Lucas replied, turning to him. "Marcos made the mistake here at the counter, but this culture was allowed from the top down." He looked at Alvaro. "As the controlling partner, I'm responsible for what this brand stands for," Lucas said. "And today it's clear the problem isn't just a rude employee. It's the message management has been sending." Alvaro nodded. "I'm listening to your decisions," he said. Lucas took a breath. "Marcos, you're not staying on the front line," Lucas said firmly. "The company will respect your rights, but as of today, you're removed from customer service. Someone who humiliates clients does not represent this brand." Marcos collapsed into a chair, speechless. Lucas then turned to the manager. "You're being removed as manager of this unit," he continued. "You'll be moved to an internal position and placed in the leadership and people management program. If you ever return to leading a team, it should be with respect, not fear." The manager only nodded. Finally, Lucas looked at the cashier. "What's your name?" he asked. "Julia," she replied. "Julia, I saw your discomfort from the beginning," he said. "Even under pressure, you stayed respectful. That's the kind of attitude I want to see grow here." He turned to Alvaro. "I want Julia in the internal development program." he requested. People who treat those who seem small with kindness are usually big on the inside. Alvaro agreed. Some customers started clapping softly. Let this store never forget, Lucas concluded. The mark you leave on people isn't on a label. It's in how they feel when they walk out that door. But the true consequences of that morning would only appear over time. 6 months later, the luxury store looked almost the same from the outside. Perfect window display, flawless lighting, soft carpet. But inside, no one forgotten that morning, the day the ordinary guy revealed he was the owner of it all. That day had become an example in trainings, meetings, and whispered hallway conversations, and the impact went far beyond that one address. Across town, on a busy neighborhood street, a small self-service grocery store bustled with simple but steady movement. There, wearing a basic t-shirt, a badge that said attendant and a tired look, a man stocked shelves and rang up customers. It was Marcos. After the scandal in the luxury store, his dismissal came quickly. The company honored his rights, just as Lucas had demanded, but his reputation as the arrogant salesman spread faster than he ever imagined. Doors that once seemed open began closing one by one. Resumes ignored, cold interviews, vague rejection emails, until a chance came up at that modest neighborhood market. We don't have high-end customers here, the owner, a simple man, told him. We've got local people. Whoever walks in, you treat them well, whoever they are. At first, Marcos found it strange. He was used to measuring people from head to toe. Now he had to weigh onions, allow small tab accounts, help elderly customers read labels. But slowly, something in him began to shift. One day, a woman walked in still wearing her cleaning uniform, stained with bleach. His old instinct to judge flared up, and he froze. He remembered Lucas, also in simple clothes, being humiliated in front of everyone. He took a breath and did something different. "Ma'am, can I help you find what you need?" he asked sincerely. She smiled, surprised. "Thank you, son. No one ever has patience with me." Her words hit him hard. For the first time, Marcos truly felt the weight of his choices, humiliate or welcome, and he decided to learn instead of repeating his mistakes. Other egos started to crumble too. The former luxury store manager now worked in an office with no windows to the public, dealing with internal processes and attending leadership and empathy training. No plush carpets, no important ladies to impress, just spreadsheets, feedback sessions, and long, uncomfortable looks in the mirror. During one workshop, the consultant asked, "Has anyone here ever seen a customer treated like they were less because of how they looked?" In his mind, the whole scene replayed. Lucas at the door, Marcos laughing, himself pretending not to see. This time, he didn't look away. "I have," he admitted, "and I let it happen." It wasn't a pretty speech, but it was honest. And it was the beginning of a change that, while it couldn't erase the past, could stop it from playing out the same way again. The elegant woman who whispered that Lucas didn't look like someone who shopped there got her lesson too. One afternoon, she walked into an Andrade accessories store in another mall, without noticing the coincidence at first. Simple space, friendly staff, no one assessing her from head to toe, no one asking if she was sure she was invited to be there. She bought a gift and was respectfully treated from start to finish. On her way out, she glanced up at the storefront name, Andrade Accessories. Her stomach dropped. Her mind flashed back to that morning in the luxury store, to the words she'd whispered, to Lucas's calm gaze. "I became exactly the kind of person I hate most," she muttered to herself, ashamed. Their fall wasn't just professional or financial. It was a fall of the ego. Life, in different ways, was teaching them that respect isn't a perk reserved for people who look rich. It's a basic duty toward any human being who crosses your path. And while all that was happening, Lucas was using what had happened in that store to build something bigger. After that incident, Lucas didn't want the story to end with just firings and embarrassment. He knew scandal creates gossip, but only transformation creates real example. Instead of just cleaning up the brand image, he decided to use what he had of greatest value. His experience as a poor kid, humiliated in stores, and as a businessman who now had a voice and resources. His first move was inside the holding company itself. In a meeting with directors and managers, he went straight to the point. "From today on, every brand in this group will have mandatory training in dignified customer service," he said. "Not a pretty lecture, ongoing practice. And I want every case of prejudice dealt with for real, not swept under the rug." He created a simple protocol. Any customer who felt disrespected would have direct access to a complaint channel that wouldn't die in an inbox. An independent team would analyze each case, and the results would affect bonuses, promotions, and performance goals. Humiliating a customer now had real consequences. But Lucas wanted to go beyond mall corridors. He remembered his mother, Rosa, in their small home, dragging herself back from long days of cleaning. He remembered his father, kicked away from store doors because he messed up the facade. That's when the Real People project was born. The project had two main goals. First, free courses in human-centered customer service and financial education for youth from poor neighborhoods who, like Lucas, wanted to work in retail but only knew closed doors. Second, partnerships with small businesses, small markets, corner stores, little shops, teaching owners how to sell more without copying the culture of humiliation. In the first training sessions, dozens of Lucases sat in simple chairs, listening closely. "Here, no one gets measured by their clothes," he told them. "The only thing I want to see growing is the respect you give and the future you build. And here's what that looked like out in the real world. The same luxury store where it all started turned into a testing ground for change. Under new management, it adopted a clear and strict code of conduct. On the staff-only side of the door, where every employee could see it, Lucas chose a sentence to be displayed. It's not the customer who walks into your reality. It's you who walks into theirs. Enter with respect." Over time, the store's reputation shifted. Once known as that place where they look you up and down, it became known as the store that treats everyone well, even if you're just browsing. People who never would have dared step inside now walked in without fear. Some bought something, others didn't, but everyone left with their dignity intact. Soon, news outlets started telling the story of the kid who grew up poor, became the owner, got humiliated in his own business, and chose to transform the system instead of just getting revenge. In interviews, Lucas always summed it up the same way. "The problem was never the luxury," he said. "The problem has always been the lack of respect. A beautiful store that treats people badly is just an expensive stage for bad character." Meanwhile, Andrade Accessories expanded its social projects. Scholarships for customers' kids, support for small entrepreneurs, microcredit with guidance, not just interest. The bigger the chain grew, the more ordinary people were brought into real opportunities. And this is where the story stops being just about Lucas. This is where it becomes about us. In the end, this was never just about an expensive store, an Italian briefcase, or an approved card. From the very beginning, it was about something much bigger, the gap between appearance and essence. If Lucas's journey makes anything crystal clear, it's this: clothes do not measure character, and no bank balance can buy real respect. He was the same kid who'd once been turned away at a birthday party in a mall, who heard a security guard ask if he was sure he'd been invited. The difference is that over time, he stopped asking permission to be in certain places and started building his own. The world looked at him and saw just another ordinary guy, but inside, he had already decided something. He would never treat anyone as less. That's the real turning point. While a lot of people waste energy trying to look big, Lucas spent his energy becoming big for real. He worked in silence, studied when no one was watching, respected people no one respected. And the day life put everyone in the same room, some people's masks fell, while other people's essence shone. In the end, money only amplifies who a person already is. In the hands of someone who confuses status with dignity, power becomes a weapon of humiliation. In the hands of someone who remembers where they came from, it becomes a tool for transformation. Lucas could have simply humiliated them back. Instead, he chose something far more powerful, to use his authority to change the system and open doors for people who are still treated today the way he once was. Maybe you'll never walk into a luxury store as the owner. Maybe you don't even want to. But one way or another, all of us have been on both sides. The one who judges by appearance, and the one who's judged. And that's where the real question starts hammering in your chest when this story ends. What kind of person do you choose to be when no one is watching? So think carefully. How many times have you underestimated someone because of their clothes, their accent, where they came from? And how many times have you been the one made to feel small just because you didn't seem to fit that place? And have you ever been underestimated or seen someone being judged by how they look? What would you do in that situation? If this story made you remember someone, if it tightened something in your chest, or if it made you reflect, even just a little, about how you treat and are treated by others, hit the like button right now. It's not just a button, it's your way of saying you want more stories that poke, that expose injustice, and that show it is possible to flip the script without losing your humanity. And don't keep this to yourself. Share this video with someone who needs this message today, that friend who feels small in certain places, or that person who might be forgetting that no one is better than anyone else because of what they wear or what's in their bank account. Here, we'll keep telling stories of ordinary people who, like Lucas, prove in real life that character weighs more than labels, and that humility never goes out of style. So subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stick around. There are many more stories coming to inspire you, to challenge you, and maybe to help you write your own turning point. See you in the next video.